very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the invitation to come to your show and to your country.
Hvala vam puno, dame i gospodo, što ste me pozvali da dođem na vašu izložbu i vašu zemlju.
It gives me my great pleasure to judge for the first time in this country, and I thank the committee and the organising secretary for the invitation.
Velika mi je čast da dođem u ovu zemlju i da sudim ovdje i zahvaljujem se komitetu i organizatorima na pozivnici.
It's a pleasure to see so many of you here tonight.
Zadovoljstvo mi je da vidim toliko vas prisutno ovdje večeras.
Now to start off with, as you have gathered, my name is Gilmour. I'm an international judge. I have judged in this country. This is the 30th country that I've had the pleasure of judging at international shows or shows at.
Da se predstavim, ime mi je Gilmour i ja sam međunarodni sudija i sudio sam na izložbama po mnogim zemljama i ovo je 30. zemlja u kojoj sudim.
I have been a breeder of dogs, bulteriers, Staffordshire bulteriers and whippets for 45 years.
Već 45 godina se bavim uzgojem pasa, bulterijera, stafordskih terijera i Indjija.
I've had the pleasure of living and working as a professional handler both in America and in Italy and in Europe.
Bila mi je čast da radim kao profesionalni handler u Americi, Italiji i
I have owned, bred or handled over 100 champion dogs in these three breeds.
Imao sam, odgajao sam ili sam handlovao preko 100 šampiona među ove tri rase.
And from this has been a continuous line of champion after champion. It's been hard work, it's been dedication, and to me, dedication is the most important word in dogs.
Što se toga tiče, odgajati tolike i baviti se tolikim šampionima, pre svega zahteva puno posla i puno posvećenosti, a po meni je posvećenost najbitnija u svemu tome.
When I first started judging, as a young, obviously younger man, I was taking notes of the dogs I was judging, and an old terrier man stopped me and said, "Son, what are you doing?"
Kada sam bio mlad, kada sam počinjao da sudim, hvatao sam beleške o svakom psu kog sam ocenjivao i onda mi je prišao jedan stariji sudija i pitao me, mladiću, šta to radiš?
I explained to him and I was taking notes down of the dogs, and he said, "There is nothing better, there isn't a camera in the world that's better than that."
I onda mi je rekao da ne postoji ništa, pitao me šta radim, ja sam rekao da hvatam beleške o psima, on mi je rekao da ne postoji ništa, ni pisana reč, ni kamera što može da uhvati bolje nego vaša glava.
The secret of good judging, of good breeding, is concentration.
Tajna dobrog suđenja i dobrog odgajanja je koncentracija.
The most important thing in any breeding program is the pedigree.
I najbitnija stvar u bilo kom programu odgajanja je pedigre.
Some years ago, my wife and I looked at a champion whippet dog.
Pre nekoliko godina moja žena i ja smo posmatrali šampionskog ripita,
Who was a great winner.
koji je bio sjajan pobednik na izložbama.
I asked her to send to the people for the pedigree of this dog.
Tražio sam da mi pošalju pedigre tog psa.
When the pedigree arrived, I read the pedigree and I ripped it up.
Kada je pedigre stigao, pročitao sam ga, pocepao i bacio.
And my wife asked me, "What are you doing?"
Žena me pitala šta to radiš.
The pedigree is absolutely no good. The dog is what we call in English a flash in the pan. It's a nothing dog.
Pedigre je totalno loš i ovaj pas je ono što mi zovemo na engleskom ništa, loš pas.
That dog was mated to 250 bitches and only 2 champions.
Taj pas vario sa 250 kuja i nastalo je od toga samo 2 šampiona.
So from that, a lesson was learned of the previous experiences. But the pedigree is vastly the most important thing that you can have in your line. But plus, it's no use breeding anything unless you have a very, very good bitch line. You can use any dog in the country, but you must have a good bitch line.
Iz toga je naučena lekcija da nije bitno koliko je dobar pas, bitna je krvna linija. Isto tako, ukoliko parite psa, jako je bitno da ženka ima dobru krvnu liniju.
The 4 breeds that we have to talk about tonight is the Amstaff, the Bull Terrier, Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and the Miniature Bull Terrier. Talking about the Miniature Bull Terrier is basically talking about the standard Bull Terrier. The only difference is the height.
4 rase o koje ćemo večeras pričati su američki stafordski terijer, bulterijer, stafordski bulterijer i minijaturni bulterijer.
These breeds basically, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this because I know the majority of people here tonight are American Staffordshire Terrier breeders. I'm saying it genuinely.
Govorim o tome da su ove 4 vrste bitne, ne samo zato što znam da je ovde većina ljudi su odgajivači američkih stafordskih terijera, već da govorim iz iskustva.
In my opinion, as a professional judge,
u mom mišljenju kao profesionalnog sudije,
the American Staffordshire Bull Terrier is the best moving terrier in the terrier group.
Po mom mišljenju kao sudije, američki stafordski terijer je pas koji se najbolje kreće u odnosu na sve terijere u grupi.
There's a distinct difference in the movement as is to the standards, but overall the depth of quality of the movement of the American Staffordshire Bull Terrier is greater than any other terrier.
Postoje velike sličnosti u kretanju, ali što se tiče američkog stafordskog terijera, ima najbolji kvalitet kretanja među terijerima.
The first breed that we'll speak about tonight is the Staffordshire Bull Terrier. Now, here in Europe, the phrase is often used English Staffordshire. Wrong.
Prva rasa o kojoj ću pričati je stafordski bull terrier. Fraza koja se često koristi za ovu rasu u Evropi je engleski stafford, što je pogrešno.
These breeds were basically all from the same stock.
Sve ove rase su u suštini maltene iz istog legla, jako su povezane.
The Staffordshire Bull Terrier is probably the oldest of these breeds.
Staffordski bull terrier je najverovatnije najstariji od svih ovih rasa.
I am of a strong opinion that the Staffordshire Bull Terrier shouldn't be called a terrier.
Moje mišljenje da stafordski bull terrier uopšte ne treba zvati terijerom.
And really, neither should the Bull Terrier be called a terrier, and I don't think in a professional, the American Staffordshire Bull Terrier should be called a terrier either, because I believe that they're a bull breed.
Takođe, ni bull terijera, ni američkog staffordskog terijera ne treba zvati terijerom, jer ja verujem da su oni rase bull.
Starting with the Staffordshire Bull Terrier and talking about that as a breed. This breed is probably 250 years old.
Što se tiče staffordskog bull terijera i priča o njemu kao o rasi, ova rasa je najverovatnije preko 250 godina stara.
But it wasn't registered with the English Kennel Club until 1935.
Ali nije bila registrovana u Engleskom kinološkom savezu do 1935.
The difference, and I'm sure that some of you here have read the breed standard, the difference in the height and weight ratio in a Staffordshire Bull Terrier is ridiculous.
Pošto verujem da svi ovde znate standarde, razlika u visini i širini
Ridiculous.
u visini i težini je smešna.
This breed, to get it established as a breed, had 4 towns in the Midlands of England. And all these people had a different style of dog. And remember that they were all working dogs, they were fighting dogs.
I bilo je potrebno iz 4 različita okruga u Britaniji. U 4 različita okruga ljudi su imali 4 različita stila ovog istog psa i potrebno je zapamtiti da su oni svi bili radni psi.
To get the breed established with the Kennel Club, the variation in height and the variation in weight was to suit all the people who were at that meeting.
I da bi se uspostavio standard, bilo je potrebno uskladiti sve te varijacije u visini i težini da bi se zadovoljili svi ti različite varijante istog psa.
And this standard remained from 1935 to 1948.
I taj standard je opstao od 1935. do 1948.
The height of the dogs and the bitches was brought down from 18 inches to 16 inches.
Visina pasa i kuja je spuštena sa 18 inča na 16.
The weight ratio remained the same.
Što se tiče težine, to je ostalo isto.
The leading lights in the breed at that time was Joe Mallam, Joe Dunn, and Mr. Priest.
Gospodin Priest, Joe Mallam i Joe Dunn su bili vodeći ljudi što se tiče odgajanja ovih pasa.
And what was happening at that time was that, as I've explained, these dogs were used for fighting.
I ti psi su se u to vreme koristili za borbe.
So you had a difference in weight and height to the different areas.
I postojale su razlike što se tiče visine i težine u različitim oblastima.
These dogs, because they were fighting dogs, they supplemented money to the families.
Ti ljudi, pošto su bili borbeni psi, su obezbeđivali novac porodici.
So the temperaments had to be excellent because the dogs lived with children.
I temperament je morao da bude izuzetan zato što su ti psi živeli sa decom.
And by this is one of the reasons why the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and probably the American Staffordshire Bull Terrier, has this lovely temperament, very nice temperament with people.
I to je sigurno veoma bitan razlog zašto stafordski bulterijer i američki stafford ima prijatan temperament i zna sa decom i ljudima.
In England at that time, there was a breed of dog called the Dudley Terrier.
U to vreme u Engleskoj postojala rasa psa koju su zvali Dudley Terrier.
And this breed of dog was also a fighting dog.
I to je bio borbeni pas.
Very capable fighting dog.
Veoma sposoban.
As good as any of the pit dogs of that day.
Isto tako dobar kao bilo koji pit pas u to vreme.
But there was a problem.
Ali postao problem.
The temperaments weren't good.
Nije bio dobrog temperamenta.
And these chain makers and miners from England sold this breed to the Americans.
I svi ti kovači i rudari iz Engleske su prodali ovu rasu Amerikancima.
And this is the breed who is very strongly behind the old red-nosed breed.
I to je rasa koja u stvari stoji iza svih tih dobro uzgojenih rasa.
And
koji imaju crveni nos.
And by excluding this breed from their breeding line, they then stuck to the dog that they had at that time.
I isključivši ovu rasu iz njihove linije odgoja, zadržali su se na rasi koju su gajali do tada.
And what happened was that the breed became stabilized.
I ono što se desilo jeste da se se rasa stabilizovala.
in temperament.
Što se temperamenta.
But not, still they had tremendous variations on different areas of sizes and heights.
Ali i dalje su postojale veoma velike varijacije što se tiče visine i težine u različitim oblastima zemlje.
It's only in the last 25 years that the breed has started, as a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, has started to stabilize itself and look basically all the same.
Tek se u poslednjih 20 godina rasa Staffordskog Bull Terriera stabilizovala što se fizičkih karakteristika tiče i počeli su da izgledaju prilično jednako.
What we've got to remember, the breed had only come together as a breed since 1935.
Ono čega moramo se setimo jeste da je ta rasa uspostavljena tek 1935.
From a registered situation, then this is only a short period for an actual breed of dog.
Što se tiče situacije za jednu registrovanu rasu, ovo je prilično kratak period za prirodnog gajačca.
The colour in the Staffordshire Bull Terrier is every colour except, or with white, except liver or black and tan.
Dozvoljene boje za Staffordskog Bull Terriera su sve moguće boje, osim boje džigerice. I black and tan.
Black and tan.
I crne, black and tan, ukoliko se brane.
On one occasion, when I was judging in Austria, two liver-coloured youths, young dogs, came into the ring. They were beautiful, but I had to say out.
Kad sam sudio u Austriji, pojavili su se dva mlada psa koji su bili prelepi, ali im je boja bila boja džigerice, ja sam morala da izbacim iz ringa.
And the lady who bred these dogs was the secretary of the club.
A žena koja je uzgajala ove pse je bila sekretarica kinološkog društva.
She came and asked me why I asked the dogs to leave.
Pitala me zašto sam zamolio da psi budu odstranjeni, da izađu iz ringa.
I didn't create the rules. The FCI created that rule because at that time in England you couldn't disqualify a dog. It's only recently that this is a new law that's come into England. Previous to 6 months ago, you couldn't disqualify a dog in England, even for biting you.
Ja sam rekla da nisam ja taj koji je kreirao pravila, nego Kinološki savez. A do pre par godina u Engleskoj, u Velikoj Britaniji, nisi mogao da diskvalifikuješ psa, čak i kada bi te ujao.
So a lesson was learned by the Austrian people that liver and black and tan were to be excluded.
I ono što smo učili od Austrijanaca jeste da psi boje džigerice i black and tan moraju da budu isključeni.
The difference in the make and shape of a Staffordshire Bull Terrier to the other Bull Terriers or the other breeds is more, not so much with American Staffordshires and Staffordshires. There's a strong similarity in the heads.
Što se tiče razlika u građi između Staffordskog Bull Terriera i američkog Staffordskog Terijera, postoje veoma velike sličnosti što se tiče glave. Imaju veoma sličnu glavu.
But with the shoulder placement and the muscling over the shoulder in the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, it's entirely different from the American.
Što se tiče ramenog dela, Staffordski Bull Terrier se veoma razlikuje, i mišića u tom delu Staffordski Bull Terrier se veoma razlikuje, totalno različit od američkog Staffordskog.
Some individual Staffordshire Bull Terriers are very good movers.
Pojedini Staffordski Bull Terrieri se veoma dobro kreću.
But probably 80% or 85% are not so good at moving.
Ali nekih 80 do 85% se ne kreću baš tako dobro. Nemaju tako dobro kretanje.
And by saying that, the ones who are good movers are so much of a benefit to the breed.
I oni koji se dobro kreću donose jako veliki doprinos samoj rasi. So hopefully the people in Staffordshire Bull Terriers
will look at these good movers and start using them more. Because what I've found is that these good movers are also very well bred dogs.
I to daje nadu da će uzgajivači stafordskog bulterijera iskoristiti i okrenuti se ovim psima da bi dalje razvijali rasu, jer ono što sam primetio jeste da su svi ti psi koji se dobro kreću imaju veoma dobro poreklo.
A puppy, it doesn't matter what breed it is, what dog it is. A puppy grows from its feet up the way, not down, up.
Svako kuće, nije bitno koje rase, raste od svojih šapa, od nogu, kako na gore, a ne obrnuto.
So one of the great benefits of looking at a puppy's feet can very much tell you what size that puppy is going to be when it's an adult.
Kada dobro pogledate u kuće, u njegove prednje i zadnje noge, to može vam reći kakav će taj pas biti kada odraste.
And as I said already, the most important thing is the bitches.
I kao što sam već rekao, kuve su veoma važne u odgajanju.
We have in Staffordshire Bull Terriers at the moment some very, very good dogs, both brindle, but and emphasizing this, in the past the reds weren't so strong, but now they are becoming very strong.
I sada imamo nekoliko veoma dobrih pasa.
The reds are becoming very strong.
I psi crvene boje postaju veoma snažni.
In the quality.
Što se tiče kvaliteta.
So it's very important for Staffordshire Bull Terrier people not just to look at brindles, but to also look at the advantage and how the reds have jumped so fast in so short a years.
Veoma je važno za odgajivače da obrate pažnju na to kako su ti crveni psi se poboljšali tako brzo tokom poslednjih godina.
I have bred more brindles, champions than reds.
Ja sam odgajao mnogo više tigrastih nego crvenih pasa tokom godina.
Because in those days the depth of quality of the brindles was far greater than the reds.
U to vreme je kvalitet tigrastih pasa bio mnogo veći nego kod ovih crvene boje.
The breed, certainly here in Serbia, is no way near as strong as the American Staffordshire is. Probably the American Staffordshire Terrier, and I'm not saying this because I'm in Serbia, I know because I've judged and I've watched them all over the world. They are probably as good as anybody else in the world.
U Srbiji nema toliko ove rase u poređenju sa američkim staffordskim terijerom, ali viđao sam i smatram da što se američkog Stafforda tiče da su dobri kao u bilo kom delu sveta.
Staffordshire Bull Terrier in every other country other than some of the countries in Europe, and certainly in the UK is far stronger. So the quality in depth is very good in the UK.
Što se tiče Staffordskog Bull Terriera, mnogo su jači u Evropi i u Velikoj Britaniji i kvalitet pasa je veoma izražen.
The difference between the UK and the rest of the world, the UK is a country of specialists.
Što se tiče toga, razlike između Velike Britanije i ostatka sveta jeste da su u Britaniji zemlja eksperata što se ove rase tiče.
The rest of the world is mostly all-rounders.
Ostatak sveta nije u toj meri.
So what you get then when judging takes place, if you have an all-rounder judging, and I class myself as one of the all-rounders, maybe not in depth of judging 10 groups, but certainly in the groups I'm involved in. I find that the all-rounder looks at the movement of the dog, looks at the construction of the dog, but doesn't look at type.
Što se tiče suđenja u više grupa, primetili smo da takve sudije mnogo više gledaju kretanje pasa nego samu građu.
There's one thing you should never ever forget as a judge, and specifically as a breeder, is type. It's the most important thing in the world.
Stvar koja se ne smije zaboraviti ni kao sudija, ni kao odgajivač, jeste sam tip psa.
Once you lose type, you have nothing but a mongrel.
Kada tog tipa nestane, ostaje samo mešanac.
I think that we have covered enough about Staffordshire Bull Terriers. We will now go on to, what we'll do is we'll talk about the breeds first of all, and then at the end we can have a question and answer period where people can ask questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer what they've asked.
Smatram da bi to bilo dosta o staffordskom Bull Terrieru. Ja ću pričati o rasama, a nakon toga bih voljela da mi postavite pitanja i nadam se da ću biti sposobna da odgovorim svako od njih.
We can now go on to talking about the Bull Terrier.
Sad možemo nastavimo da se pričamo o Bull Terrieru.
Standard. The standard Bull Terrier, the big one.
Aha, standard, klasično Bull Terrier.
The Bull Terrier was established by a guy in Birmingham who was a dog dealer called James Hicks.
Taj tip data rasa psa je uspostavljen od strane čovjeka iz Birminghama koji je bio prodavac pasa,
James Hicks.
James Hicks, po imenu James Hicks.
And this guy had a bitch that he started to show, one of his first that he had bred, called Puss.
I on je imao ženku koju je počeo da izvodi po imenu.
James Hicks used the now extinct English White Terrier.
On nije koristio standardne i engleske kriterijume.
And by using the old fighting dog to the English White Terrier, he produced the Bull Terrier.
I parenjem starog borbenog psa sa engleskim Bull Terrierom proizveo je Bull Terrier.
Mr. Hicks also kept Dalmatians.
On je također držao i Dalmatine.
I asked his grandson, Carlton Hicks, who at the time was a very old man, and I knew this man quite extensively.
Pitao sam njegovog unuka, Carltona Hicksa, koga sam poznala u davno doba.
I asked him how many times his grandfather had used the Dalmatian, and he said no, never.
Pitao sam da koliko puta je njegov deda za to koristio, za parenje koristio Dalmatinca, on je rekao ne.
So there has been, over all the years in Bull Terriers, people talk about the different types. They talk about the Bull type, they talk about the Bull and Terrier type, and they talk about the Dalmatian type. It never existed.
I često se čuju priče da ljudi pričaju o Bull tipu, Bull Terrier tipu i Dalmatiner tipu koji u stvari nikada nije postojao.
In the early days of the Bull Terrier, dogs like Rubislaw and so forth, Serbian Queen, White Queen, and other ones were prominent, as were the Balhurst kennels in England.
I od tog doba poznati su bili psi, pogotovo iz odgajivačnice Balhurst. Što se je Balhurst?
Balhurst.
Balhurst u Engleskoj.
In America they had the Monty Air kennels.
Imali su Monty-ir odgajivačice u Americi.
And in America at that time, dogs' ears were trimmed.
I u Americi u to vreme bile su im kupirane uši.
And it was only well after the English Kennel Club had deemed this wrong in 1898, so bull terriers were stopped from trimming ears in 1898.
Sa ovim je prestalo, s kupiranjem ušiju je prestalo 1898. godine.
There was a book kept at that time called the White Stud Book.
Postoji knjiga iz tog vremena koja se zove Bela uzgojna knjiga.
And only white could be mated to white.
I samo su beli mogli da se pare sa belim.
In 1949 came along probably the greatest breeder, or before 1949, in 1939. But in 1949, after the Second World War had finished, he met with the bull, this man met with the Bull Terrier Club and demanded that coloured dogs be used to whites.
Jedan veliki odgajivač je negdje posle rata 1949. godine tražio od Britanskog kinološkog saveza da se dakle, psi druge boje da mogu da se pare sa belim psima.